Hey, welcome to a special bonus episode. We're going to be talking about Old Time Religion and speaking with their frontman, Arrington DiDionyso. They're a big, well-loved band here in the Pacific Northwest, and they're going on their first tour in over a decade. They're playing Portland, Billings, Madison, Milwaukee, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Asheville, Knoxville, St. Louis, Kansas City, and Denver. And they're on tour right now, so be sure and look them up and check them out. I've got some stickers and buttons that I ordered with the logo that Bella Dalton made, and I'd love to get them into your hands. Just give me a rating, a review on iTunes or wherever else. And then send me an email, lowprofilemarkley@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to send you some stuff. I might want a little help with international shipping, but if it's domestic, I got a book of stamps, no problem. Also, I've got a Patreon going for the show. You can find that at lowprofilepodcast.com. Anyway, here we go, talking Old Time Religion with Jeremy returning on the panel and Arrington DiDionyso. Enjoy. I love that song. Hi, this is Markley. I'm here with Jeremy and Arrington. We're here to talk about this band called Old Time Religion. They're a beacon of the Pacific Northwest, freak out music scene of yesteryear and also of the future. And Jeremy, what's your relationship to this band?
Oh, well, I heard you guys a couple of years ago. A friend of mine posted a best of 2007 music list on the internet because it had been 10 years. And the song Indestructible Life was on there. Blew my mind, and I was like, I need to hear more about this band. And I listened to the album and loved it, and then looked it up, and you're from the town I live in.
Oh man,
no, Mark.
And that's wild.
You have a very close relationship with this project.
I do. I am the singer, and I write all the songs. I do some guitar playing and a little bit of saxophone and a bit of bass clarinet.
Some wind.
Some wind, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say I'm pretty intimately involved with the band Old Time Religion for a long time. Yeah.
I'm glad too. It wouldn't be the same without you, really.
It would be a very interesting. It'd be a very different band without my input into it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a new record out.
Yeah, brand new. Came out in March, and the recording for it was all finished right before the new year, I think. It all happened really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even in November maybe. From start to finish, it was like we had been inactive for about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, that song that you're referring to, "Indestructible Life," that's the first song on Catharsis in Crisis, which was the last album that we released as a band that came out in 2007. So here we are 11, 12 years later, 2019. We have this record called See Now and Know. And it was like a series of conversations between me and Aaron Hartman, the bass player, who kind of took it upon himself to produce this album. So we did this in a really different way than some of our other stuff. It's not really, well, it's the first album that we've ever done that wasn't recorded in Dub Narcotic Studio.
Sure.
So that right there is a huge difference. It's our first recording. I don't even, it's hard for me to admit this in public. It's our first recording not done with tape. And, you know, like all analog stuff. It was recorded on a computer, and you know, hey, it sounds amazing. It came out great.
Yeah,
so
it sounds awesome.
you know, I mean, I don't know. I used to be really like
Old school.
old school. Yeah, yeah. I would say I've got a pretty heavy track record of being old school with my audio stuff. You know, doing on tape and all that. But hey, computers work too, I guess.
Yeah.
And it sounds good. So
It's hard to let go of the old format, though. I mean,
you have to work a really different way around it. Yeah.
that's
yeah.
true.
Yeah, it's different.
I think the hardest thing for me when I was recording music in the studio was the all of a sudden you can do infinite number of takes.
Yeah.
And I feel like that can be more of I think that can actually hold you back
Yeah.
from giving your all on any given take.
So speaking of takes, here's my take on it.
I like what you did there.
The constraints of the analog approach have always enhanced the creative experience for me. So if I'm going to transfer to a digital approach, I need to kind of import some extra like constraints just as a way of working.
Yeah.
So most of the vocal takes, well, let me think. Yeah, almost all of the vocal takes on the album are like first or second takes. So like I would rehearse several times without recording.
Right, yeah.
Like a lot of people, they'd go into the studio, they'd like record every single version, even if it's just like, oh, I'm just warming up, but yeah, go ahead, record it anyway, because, you know, why not? We've got infinite amount of space or whatever. So like I only recorded when I was actually doing the take, and I think, if memory serves correctly, I think most of what's on the album is the first, second, or maybe there's a couple things that are like the third take, but most of them I do all the way through.
And so this was with the sort of what became the classic lineup of the group, right?
Yeah. Jermaine Baca's our drummer, and then Benjamin Hartman is Aaron's little brother, and he actually only plays on I think just one section for the actual album, but when we tour, he's like the saxophone player.
Gotcha.
With the live show. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he was on a couple albums before, back in the Oddies.
Yeah, he's just on Catharsis and Crisis.
Oh, that was his first album.
Yeah, well, and same with Jermaine. Jermaine toured with, Jermaine toured with us before that album came out, but that's the only album that she was on as well.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of you picked up where you left off.
Yeah. But that's the version of the band that most people saw, because that was the version that like toured the most.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
'Cause we did the full U.S. and Europe saturation like 3 or 4 times with that lineup. I mean, we were just making like circles all around the country.
Yeah. It was
2007, 2008. Well, 2006, 7, and 8. It's just like a crazy blur. Like I don't think I had a house the whole time. I was kind of like camping out at Dub Narcotic Studio.
Yeah,
Because I wouldn't be in town for more than, you know, I think like a month would be the longest I would be home. So I just kind of was crashing around for a bit.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I remember seeing you at the studio pretty much all hours.
Yep.
Whether you were working or not.
Yeah. I probably wasn't doing a heck of a lot of work at that point. Yeah.
So would you say that was at the kind of the height of your popularity during the first run?
With that band, yeah. Because when we got, by the time the last album came out, I mean, you know, it was like a culmination of everything else we'd done. And for that last album, we had a little bit more of like a publicity machine behind us. I mean, I know, I don't know who actually paid for it. I mean, I think between K Records and then I think a lot of it might have come out of pocket for the band as well. But, you know, we had like a kind of more of like a publicity engine pushing it in the rock and roll world, you know.
So how did you feel about that, kind of being a little more into the machine? Not that you guys are ever like.
I mean, it's just like a drop in the bucket. Like I don't. It didn't really have any like massive impact in like breaking into that world at all. Really, the thing about our band that, you know, I mean, it's like it's hard for me to talk about my own band sometimes, but I mean, the thing that we've always managed to do, regardless of the lineups, because, you know, we've had a lot of drummers come and go and what have you, but as a band, as a performance, we have always had a good sense of like what our impact is. So people who see an Old Time Religion show never forget it.
It's true.
Yeah.
And that's just what we've always managed to do. We can create an environment on stage that permeates the entire space. So, you know, people hanging out, even if they're all the way in the back of the hall, they're going to get that impact of the show, and it's something that'll stick with you. So, you know, I'll come across, I mean, over the last decade, I mean, I'll come across people at other gigs I'm doing with other groups or traveling or whatever, and it's like, oh, yeah, hey, you know, like, did you guys play in Omaha, Nebraska in 1999 or something? And I'm like, yeah, I remember that show. There were only like 5 people at that show. It's like, yeah, man, me and my brother were 2 of those 5 people. I always think about that show, man. That, you know, like whatever people say, like that changed their life or whatever. I mean, I don't know if it really changes anyone's life or whatever, but
it's a religious experience.
That's what people say. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's kind of what we're going for.
I remember, the weekend I moved to Olympia, I saw y'all play at the Helsing Junction sleepover.
Oh, yeah.
And it was late at night.
Yeah.
I remember there being fire everywhere, but I think that might have just been implied sonically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you definitely got down to your skivvies for some bass clarinet solos.
Yeah, there was probably a full moon.
I don't think you took them off, no.
No, I mean in the sky. But, yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's where I'm getting the fire idea from. But I just remember talking to you about it later. Like, we had never met yet at that point, but just sort of like, the music just made me kind of anxious, but like in a really fun way, and like, you know, I couldn't help but dancing and everything like that. And you told me that the mission of Old Time Religion was to evoke equal parts joy and terror.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's an apt description. So
I mean, that's kind of how life is, you know.
Oh yeah.
It's a little bit of both. And you know, we kind of turn up the contrast and just smush them both together, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of music do you guys play? Is this like alternative rock, or is it is this modern jazz?
Well, you know, I mean, back in the 90s, you know, when there still was like you know, there used to be people who wrote about music for a living. You know, like there used to be music magazines, and even if you weren't like a super famous band, you know, like bands that would release like, you know, 2,000 copies of their new album would still get reviewed in, you know, it might be like the very back pages of Spin or
sure.
There was
Arthur, remember that
Alternative.
magazine?
What was that one? Alternative Press. Or,
Yeah.
Sorry, this thing's it just keeps buzzing every time I
got
move.
a glitch.
Yeah, you know, there. So like you would get people would get really creative about how they would try to describe our sound, because it didn't really work to just list a bunch of other bands that we sounded like, you know.
Yeah, because there's so many.
Well, yeah, and it's like
It's
I don't know, man.
I don't know.
Like people would say like, oh, like it's like swamp rock, but it's also got free jazz influence, but it's also got this people talk about Captain Beefheart a lot,
they all
you know,
throw Beefheart in there.
that being an influence or whatever, and
yeah.
that was only partially accurate. I mean, I think that was accurate in my contribution, but none of my other bandmates really
they
liked Beefheart that much, actually.
Yeah.
You know,
maybe
like,
even didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron. I mean, over the years I've gotten him to listen to Beefheart kind of as an afterthought almost, but like
Okay.
he definitely initially he did not like Beefheart, and it really bothered him that people would bring that comparison in. So
Yeah, I think Beefheart would be proud of that.
yeah. But you know, but like we were trying to make dance music too. I mean, essentially everything we were doing is like we're trying to make music that people dance to. So, you know, when you talk about Beefheart, he was kind of coming at it from a pretty different angle, you know.
Sure, yeah.
When you get down to it.
Yeah, a whole nother art form, really. But I think Old Time Religion, just in the longevity of the project and all the different lineups and personnel changes and everything, it's been an uncageable animal.
Mm.
And
I like that.
yeah. Well, there you go.
Do you feel like right now, kind of what you guys are doing, like sort of the mission's the same, like you were talking before? You want it to be like a religious experience, but people that dance to, and the kind of the contrast of the light and dark.
Well, yeah, I mean, I want to really push the envelope as to like, you know, to what extent can music presented in the familiar format of like what a rock and roll band is. You know, you got guitars, you got a drum set, you got a bass, a singer. It's a show that people kind of crowd around and focus inwards on and whatever. You know, to what extent can like the presentation within the format and the tropes of a rock and roll band be a transformative experience that, you know, could bring people together, can bring people into this sort of inward experience, and also an outward experience, you know, where you know, there's a physicality to the music that I think we're really kind of trying to express. You know, I mean, I think we were always our music has always been like body positive in a way, like before people ever used that term in the way they do now. I mean, like, this was in a time when, specifically in Olympia, almost any of the shows that I went to in Olympia in the mid to late 90s were kind of like people standing perfectly still with their like shoulders sort of shrugged, and kind of people like
The stereotypical
hunched
indie
over
rock.
a little bit, and like maybe nodding their head a little bit, but like it was like really, really verboten to like start a mosh pit, because that was considered threatening to like people's like vulnerabilities or whatever. So like there had been sort of a generation of like punk music in Olympia where like moshing and like real wild behavior was sort of forbidden. And so musically we weren't really a part of like that sort of like hardcore type lineage, even though that's what we listened to growing up. But we wanted people to like move their hips a little bit more. We wanted it to be danceable, and to kind of like embrace that kind of raw physicality.
Is that where the song "Your Mama Used to Dance" came from?
Oh, well, that's a song. Ooh, yeah, that's a weird one. That song's kind of about my ex-wife.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Say hi.
Oh yeah, I'm sure she's tuning in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the short answer is no. That song was
No,
about-
not directly that one, but
Okay.
Yeah.
It was just a just a shot.
Yeah.
Okay. What about so what was going on with the album Witchcraft Rebellion?
Ooh, that's a fun one. That's one of my favorites.
It's a really fun album.
Yeah.
That's the first one I got.
Oh, cool.
So that's why I don't know. It
I
really
think for any new initiate, that's like an excellent starting point.
Yeah.
Witchcraft Rebellion! Burial boxes, flat food sutures, a costume for the breathing.
So that was the last album we did with Phil Elverum as our drummer, but also our like producer. The process of recording the albums were always kind of this sort of collective effort, but we kind of gave Phil sort of this extra level of like creative freedom with his approach to all the kind of outdated machinery that was Dub Narcotic Studio.
Yeah.
And this is when it was still at the Big Room on Legion Way. And it was the first album that we did where we recorded all the music separately from the songwriting process. So the first few records, Songbook Volume 1, Uterus and Fire, and then of course Serena de Pizarra, is sort of like Uterus and Fire translated into Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, all that. Anyway,
Yeah.
So those first three records, those were mostly songs that we had already been doing live before we recorded the songs.
Gotcha.
They were like written as like songs with the band. Witchcraft Rebellion, we went into the studio and just kind of started playing stuff, recording it, getting like really honed in like the types of sounds that we were dialing in on the board. And then I took a tape of all those sessions and I wrote lyrics to fit with every piece, and came back into the studio like, I think it was like 6 months later with like everything written down. And there's actually a couple songs on that album that are just done on my 4-track. So like, a lot of people don't know this, but like Vampire Sushi, for example, I'm actually playing all the instruments on that song.
Oh, wow.
But then we sent it from the Tascam cassette player into the board to kind of do additional mixing.
Oh, nice.
But anyway, like the concept, it's not completely consistent in every single song, but the idea was kind of like retelling the story of the book of Genesis from the serpent's perspective.
Dark of the male, light of the female.
Yeah. Mystery language.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the part where it says bdellium, onyx, gold is there. That's all from Genesis.
Bdellium, onyx, gold is there. Pick it up and put it down. Just like a head. 'Cause I don't need it.
When they're talking about like the Garden of Eden and the land where the four, in between the four rivers, and this kind of this idea of like paradise. But paradise is you either have to go really, really far back in like ancient mythical history, mythological paradise, or it's this sort of utopian idea of what could be in the future, and it's kind of this. It's this idea that, it's this land that doesn't really exist, but for imagination, So Witchcraft Rebellion is all about, like, reaching in through these, like, layers of imagination to kind of discover the treasure map, as it were, to find this kind of uncharted territory.
Yeah.
Was that the first time you did kind of like an album with a sort of singular concept? Not to narrow it down, but
no, Uterus and Fire is pretty tight too, because everything on that album is kind of like, it's about the end of the Piscean age. So it was sort of coming from this astrological concept about like, you go from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, and this was like a death knell for the age of Pisces, and this like confronting like faith and fanaticism and all that, but it was also through kind of my way of, when I was like 23 years old when I recorded that, so I had a series of relationships with several different women who were all Pisces, in the sign of Pisces. And so I kind of like conflated my personal experience in those relationships with this kind of like larger kind of cosmic mystery that I was, just trying to figure my shit out, yeah.
Yeah. And you recently shared a hell of a review Pitchfork gave that album.
Yeah. The Pitchfork review for that album that came out in '99 was a 0.3 review out of 10, and I think it really has kind of gone down in history, even for people who don't necessarily know our band that well. I think that review has gotten quite a bit of like circulation in the like rock music circles, is like a kind of a historically excessively intensely hateful review of a band, you know, like, I mean, it uses all kinds of, I mean, pretty offensive language. I mean, it says that we sound like the diarrhea of like chimpanzees with Down syndrome, and it's like there's all this like shaming of disabilities and yeah, I mean, it's like it's really obsessive.
Yeah,
yeah.
They put a lot of thought into it.
And it's a really long review, too. I mean, you think if you hate a record that much, you probably just give it like 2 sentences. And
I think
like,
now
you know.
on Pitchfork, that's what they do. They don't write
Dwell on it.
full paragraphs, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you definitely made an impact
Yeah.
on that music journalist.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was sort of like the
It's
beginning of the end of the era of music journalism.
Yeah, I mean, it's like and it's a review that's like it's so bad that I mean, I really think it kind of helped us a lot to win a lot of attention and like new fans for us, because it's the kind of thing like, oh my God, like I have to check this out.
Yeah,
like,
you have to.
Like, what could this even sound like for someone to use such like excessively descriptive language to express their displeasure listening to it. So,
And I could see you guys being a pretty polarizing band, because you're like, it's an extreme experience listening to you, like, and it's different, you know?
yeah.
Like,
I mean, initially we were definitely like the kind of band that would really clear a room pretty quickly, but then there'd always be like, 5 or 6 people who'd kind of stick it out up front, and I mean, I would say like, probably like our first like 5 years of existing as a band, that was almost exclusively our experience. Like we had a core group, like when we played in Olympia, we had a core group of like all our friends who'd come see us. And of course they would, dance like crazy maniac banshees possessed by an ancient deity or whatever. But then,
set a good example too.
Yeah, but it was kind of like we got to a point with local shows where it was only that group of people who would come. So like, I remember we did a show with Modest Mouse it was like 98 or something, and I mean it was a really stark contrast of like, this is before anyone had really ever heard of Modest Mouse, so they had like the people that came to see them, and then we were headlining, and like everybody left by the time we played, like, and 4 or 5 people, stuck it out to see us. So and that was pretty typical of Olympia.
The local headliner spot.
Yeah. And I mean, it was, it was different back then, in certain regards. But things for the band took a really different course when, that album Uterus and Fire actually got, while it was getting these really, horrible reviews from like Pitchfork and that kind of thing, in the Italian press of all places, it got picked up, not in just one major magazine, but I think like 3 of the major like underground music magazines in Italy all wrote about Uterus and Fire as like, not just a review in the review page, but like they actually made it one of the like, not like the main cover story, but like,
An article.
Like the second line down, like they wrote like really like deep, introspective, like almost academically verbose articles about this album. And of course we didn't know anything about this happening until a year later, but we started having people writing us from Italy asking when we were going to play there. And I get these, like I had just opened up like a Hotmail account at that point. And so like I get these emails and be like, haha, like what? Like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll go to Italy. Like, having absolutely no idea like what that would involve and how to make that happen. And you know, then you know, somebody wrote us who was like, hey, like, no, I'm asking because like I'm actually a booking agent and I want to book a tour for you, and you know, what do you know, what's it going to take? So like we had no idea what to do. Like this had never happened before. And we weren't you know, we weren't really on any kind of like professional touring circuit in the US. I mean, we were playing like garages and stuff out here.
Yeah. Were you going out on the road for weeks at a time and like playing garages around the country, or?
We had done one, let's see, well, at this point. Yeah, we had done a couple West Coast tours, and then I did another tour that was, I guess, about a month, which was pretty ramshackle, and I mean, in retrospect, it was really crazy, you know. I mean, yeah, it was like, it was a lot of house shows, and the house shows were usually good, and then it was a lot of like, you know, we would like, this was back in the day when you still had to like call a club on the phone, and ask if they had a date open or whatever, and like, oh yeah, from Olympia, okay, like, you know, so they, I don't know, like they thought like, oh, like maybe they sound like Unwound or something, and you know, they would book us, you know, really kind of having no idea what they were getting, and so they were definitely like a lot of like really mismatched bills, but you know, I mean, like I was saying before, I mean, I still run into people who saw us on that tour. You know, like it's like, oh yeah, like I drove like 4 hours to come see you in Minneapolis, and there was no one there. Like, you know, like there's you know, quite a lot of that even today. I'll run into people who will share those early experiences. But yeah, so we had done that, but you know, nothing like a real tour where there's like promotion and expectation.
So they get you out to Italy?
So they got us out to Italy, France, Germany, England, a couple shows in Spain, and I think they even got us one really weird show in Slovenia, and one relatively weird show in Croatia, one super weird show in the Czech Republic, and I don't think we played Poland until later. So yeah, I mean, just like all over. We were in Europe for a month.
Wow.
And it was completely crazy. The shows in Italy were a lot bigger than anywhere else.
Right. That's
So
where
then-
you had your press and your
Yeah.
new fan base.
Yeah. So then, so that started becoming a thing for, you know, basically like the next decade. I was going to Italy like every year, sometimes twice a year, because like I just was able to kind of build up a thing, and I taught myself Italian. So after about the third or fourth time I was doing a tour there, like I was, you know, fluent enough to like talk to people at shows and sell records, and you know, like sign autographs in Italian and have conversations with people and that kind of thing. So that definitely kind of became a thing for, you know, enabling the continuation of the band. And then I was like doing like a lot of like solo gigs and stuff around then, and like proposing different collaborations with people, and you know, like I could go out to Europe and like team up with other musicians and do different projects there. So.
So, had you recorded any songs in Italian before you went to Italy? Or?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess that's kind of an essential part of the story, which yeah, makes it all that much crazier. So the lag time in planning a tour, you know, it was a good like 8 or 9 months of emailing this guy back and forth before we did the first tour. So when we realized that it was like really going to happen, I I don't even understand how we did this, but we decided to, we booked like 2 days out at Dub Narcotic, and using a dictionary, I translated 3 songs one into Italian, one into Spanish, one into Portuguese. I did not at that point speak Italian or Portuguese, but I made these translations of my songs, and I checked on them as much as I could. I think I was emailing a couple people in Italy to make sure that at least, is it at least like grammatically correct or
somewhat coherent.
And, like one guy emailed me back, he's like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense, but it sounds kind of cool. So, whatever, just leave it the way it is. It'll be fine, So. And so, like in like 1 or 2 nights, we recorded this entire EP, and somehow we're able to get K Records to have all the production and mastering and have it actually released in time for our tour. It's insane because nowadays, like,
that would never happen.
You've got to have everything finished, like, it's like now they say like 6 months before the release date or 7 months before the release date. I'll have people telling me like, oh, well, really for promotion, we need it like a year ahead to get it on this thing or whatever. And it's ridiculous because, like, at the same time, you can upload something to Bandcamp like the same day that you record it if you want to.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we're caught in between these different modalities of how things are supposed to be released. But we got it, we got it out. It was in record stores. It was being distributed in Europe with enough time for the tour to happen. And so in Italy in particular, it kind of blew up, like bigger than we would have ever imagined. I mean, so, we went from, playing these gigs in Olympia where we would clear the room to all but 5 people to, like, our very first night in Rome. It wasn't like a huge venue, but it was completely sold out and completely packed. And there were people singing along with some of the songs, which I thought was crazy,
Yeah.
It's really fun.
Well, I hope you get that on this upcoming tour with the new album.
Running to and fro through the streets and the alleys. See now and know, see now and know. I'll seek you out in the open.
See Now and Know.
See Now and Know.
How do you get this record?
Well,
You got to go to the show?
yeah, at this point you got to go to the show. We had some distribution happening, and then see, here's the thing: the music business, man. Like, this is a self-produced album, and my man Aaron is kind of like in charge of putting this all together, and he fronted the production cost for 500 records, and so I'm like, okay, Aaron, like, that's cool, like, I think we could sell 500 records without a heck of a lot of, I think we could move 500. So, like, at what point are you going to order more? And he never ordered more. So we had some distribution going through K and Secretly Canadian, and now we actually, like, we had to ask for more copies back so that we have enough to take with us on the road.
Wow.
Yeah. So right now at this point, and then he decided to take it, like, we were doing a bunch of mail order through the Bandcamp site, and he decided to actually take it off Bandcamp
Wow.
because he was like, well, if we keep selling it on Bandcamp, we're not going to have any for the show. And I was like, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, you make your bed, you got to lay in it too. Like, you only made 500 copies. Like I told you, like, we might need more. But then that's the thing with the music business. If you want more copies, you gotta put more money in, because no one's gonna like front you the cash anymore.
Yeah.
And so like nobody wants to go through that thing of having like 600 CDs in their basement.
Yeah.
You know, because I'll show you. You've been to my basement, man. I got
Yeah.
there's a whole big shelf. There's a whole corner of our basement that's just boxes of merchandise from the 2000s that never got sold.
Yeah.
Because that was when, you know, you had a new album, they'd print like 5,000 copies of an album. And it was like, I don't know, no one was keeping tabs on that. No one cared. You know, maybe you only sell like, you know, nowadays, if you sell 2,000 of something, that's like, oh, yeah, that's a miracle. But, you know,
yeah, you get in the New York Times for selling 2,000 copies
yeah, nowadays.
of a physical object.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But, you know, back then they were like, they just, I don't know, they didn't care. They're like, oh yeah, we'll print 5,000 and yeah, we'll see how it does. There's like a lot more kind of gambling happening.
And does that come back on you if it doesn't sell as the artist?
Well, that's a complicated conversation.
Getting into some
yeah.
murky
That'll be
waters.
another episode.
Yeah. I mean, basically, yeah, it kind of comes back on you, but there, I don't know. I mean, like, it goes both ways. Yeah. It's sort of like everybody. I mean, really, everybody loses, except I have a basement of like thousands of CDs that, you know.
How cool is that?
When CDs get cool again in 20 years, you know.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's all money in the bank, man, because it's all going to come back around, you know.
It's true. Yeah. I sure hope so.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're closing in here.
All right.
You guys are excited about this tour, I bet. I'm excited for you.
It's going to be beautiful. It'll be good times.
You're gonna sell all the rest of those, whatever 500 minus whatever you've sold.
Yeah, whatever it is. You know, I don't even care.
And just getting it into the hands of people, so it, you know.
You know, we also made T-shirts, and you know, maybe we'll sell more T-shirts than we sell records. You know, like that's fine too. But really, it's just about like reaching people face to face, you know, with our music and doing our thing, and you know, the Old Time Religion experience. It's a real like visceral show, and I feel like the results of the effect that we have on people are really immediately experienced, and you know, like we notice, you know, when it has an impact on people. And, you know, people say so, you know. And, you know, in this day and age, you know, I'm always kind of asking myself, like, well, I kind of grew up with this belief that, you know, because my dad was really into Bob Dylan and kind of a lot of, like, you know, my dad taught me about all the, like, stuff that was happening in the 1960s and civil rights and anti-war movement stuff. And, you know, there was this kind of palpable feeling like, oh, like, you know, like music can change the world. And, you know, here we are, 2019, and we keep kind of running up against these walls of like, man, like, something's got to change the world. Like, I don't know what's going to work, because, like, we've been trying all these things, and it's not working. Like, we're still kind of going down this pretty, like, dark road, it seems, a lot of times. But I definitely have experienced firsthand, you know, I don't know what impact it has on the whole geopolitical ecology and what have you, but I know that, like, on people, if you can reach people at the like heart center and touch some kind of like emotional chord, or reach into that, I don't know, like what you call it, like that visceral, physical, palpable feeling of like the agitation and the excitation of like being moved by music. I mean, I don't know. It's like I'm kind of trying to grasp for straws here in one way, but I also feel like I have enough confidence in like the power that I've experienced that music has. Like, I know that can be channeled into having some greater impact if it's just, I don't know, just done the right way or done a certain way. I think we could pull it together somehow,
I think so too. I think music does a lot of stuff, and
it's like
move mountains with it.
people. It's almost because your music's so like sense altering almost. It's kind of like how people back in the the 60s be like, oh, just if everyone took acid, it would be different, or in the 90s, it's like if everyone took an E-pill, like all the world leaders did that.
You don't need to take any of that stuff because you got dragon juice.
Go see Old Time Religion.
Yeah, yeah.
This tour is sponsored by Dragon Juice.
Dragon Juice, yeah.
Who's got the juice? Who's got the juice? Who's got the juice when all hell breaks loose?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So I saw you. You played a show at the Backstage in Olympia at the Capitol Theater.
Yeah.
And before the show, you went around to all the bandmates on stage with like a dropper. And dropped a.
Dosed everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people ask what that is. Let me just say that it's available in just about any co-op or natural food store in America, probably most other countries too. It's an herbal supplement that is used to boost energy and endurance. The endurance is kind of the key thing because, when we bring things up to a fever pitch with the band, we don't really let it down. Like, once the show starts, there isn't a heck of a lot of time on stage where we ever like bring it down, even for a notch or so. Like we don't really have the like.
You don't skip and do a ballad or something.
No, we don't really have. We used to try to kind of do. I mean, there's a couple songs that are slightly slower, but then we bring it back up again. Yeah, but it's like every song is kind of at this like intensity that we really need to be able to sustain throughout the hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes of the set.
Definitely one of the elements that makes it so sense altering, because you don't get that a lot. Performance music. It's awesome.
Cool. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Arrington.
Thank you, Mark Lee. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Arrington.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Mark, for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I hope you have a great tour. I hope everybody here in their headphones or wherever they're living listens to Old Time Religion. You could learn a lot. And
well, we do have to say though, if you're on a computer trying to type it out, you got to remember to type out RELIJUN. Now, if you've got like that autocorrect thing on there, it might try to tell you you're spelling it wrong.
you're spelling it right, though.
But you're spelling it the right way, because if you type in the way you've been taught in school, you're going to get a bunch of like gospel stuff that you probably aren't interested in.
Or you might be.
Some of it might be pretty cool actually if you just check it out. I mean, God, like listen without prejudice. But if you want the band, the Old Time Religion band, check out RELIJUN, and that'll get you in the right direction.
And not the band playing Old Time Religion.
No,
We don't want that.
No, I mean, that's different. Yeah, it's a different thing.
That could be pretty good too.
That
though.
is pretty good.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed Old Time Religion. We'll be back in 2 weeks featuring the first live in-studio band, The Gift Machine from San Diego. Can't wait to share it with you. See you then.